Let's dive into other news outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bad news at the wide receiver position of former Pittsburgh Steeler Chase Claypool, who might not be active on Sunday for the Chicago Bears after a really, really sloppy performance, one that was called out by everybody. I mean, guys from Good Morning Football were saying that he was quote unquote sleepwalking. They didn't even name him. They were just like, you know who I'm talking about if you're watching this game. He's sleepwalking out there. Head coach Matt Eberflus, am I saying that right? Eberflus was asked about Claypool's performance, and he said this: you all saw the plays that, and again, the perimeter blocking needed to improve for us, and we're going to get that, work hard to get that done. We're looking at all the possibilities right now. I'm not going to talk about who's going to be up or down for the game right now for obvious reasons. We're looking at all things to improve our team, who's going to be up and who will be down in terms of the active roster. It seems that all signs point to Chase Claypool is on his way to a healthy scratch on Sunday after. I mean, did you watch? I didn't watch the game. You know, I don't watch Chicago games, but did you see the highlight reel of him literally doing nothing against the Green Bay Packers? Like, that was the worst performance of blocking I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I think that's, if he was just a bad blocker, like that's one thing, but
Yeah.
he was just not trying. Like that's the most damning indictment of a player I think that you can possibly have, is that he was so disinterested in trying to block for anyone.
Yeah.
It was really bad. So you start to question, and I think this is something that we have talked about before, but like, does he like football? Does he like playing football? Like, I think that's genuinely an open question at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And that was the thing, is we talked about him even before he left. Like, me and you would get on here and we talk about, oh, Chase Claypool, like, doesn't even try when it comes to blocking. And I think Chicago was like, oh, he's a big body. He's going to be the guy that leads all the charge in these screen passes and so on and so forth. And then they got one look at it and they were like, wow, this guy doesn't even try out here. Like, he could just care less. I mean, I agree with you. I think at this point you really do have to ask if Chase Claypool is given 100% to his football career. And I hate to do that to somebody. I hate to be the guy that judges somebody off of play like that and says, hey, you really committed to this game. But there are a lot of guys out there that fight every single day to be in the NFL. I think Chase Claypool was born extremely gifted and obviously has all the measurements and the body to go along with this game and make it into something great. And I just don't think that he puts the work in, and I don't know firsthand. I think this is all guess, but my assumption is that this guy just doesn't work to get better in areas that he needs to get better in. And Chicago's had enough of them. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't even matter. Like, Joey Porter Jr. could stink, could do nothing throughout his entire career. The Pittsburgh Steelers, at bare minimum, tie that trade. Like, you didn't lose anything in Chase Claypool. You lost a guy who progressively does not care about the game, and in a contract year. Like, this is it. Like, you don't have a good year this season. Who knows what happens? But this is the NFL. Wide receivers come and go like there's no tomorrow. Jarvis Landry's still sitting out there in free agency. Anthony Miller is a former second-round pick. He barely lasted after leaving the Chicago Bears. These guys dip all the time. Like, there's nothing guaranteed at the wide receiver position. If you're that bad, maybe somebody picks you up, but they're not going to give you much of an effort or much of a chance to be one of their top dogs heading into the season. I think this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point. Like, he was born in such a good like, he was born with so many gifts. Like, at the very least, if he was working hard enough at it, he could be a fantastic blocker and like a good special teamer. Like, he just has the kind of athleticism for it. But he just, like, that's the thing. He doesn't need to love football. Like, that's not a requirement for a human being. But like you said, there are people who like sweat and bleed and work so hard for a roster spot in an NFL football team. And I think there's so many people who might have seen Chase Claypool play the way he did last week and thought, wow, this guy gets a roster spot over me. Like, why? It's got to be frustrating if you are a guy who's battled so hard for a spot in professional football, then to watch that and think, wow, a guy who's literally not even trying is getting an opportunity over me.
Yeah, and the craziest part there is you said, like, oh, you just have to be good at blocking, you have to be good. Like, that was, I remember, like, Chase Claypool was the first draft I ever covered, and he That's all Mike Tomlin talked about. That's all Kevin Colbert talked about, was how this guy at the Senior Bowl stood out, because they just couldn't believe how much effort he was putting in on special teams. Like, this guy was just a special teams fiend. He was a guy that loved to be out there and work hard. And that's all he was talking about in his opening press conference was, yeah, man, special teams is a huge factor in my game. I pride myself on it. Like, it was all the indications of this guy loves to work hard. And no, it went out. I mean, maybe it got to his head. Maybe, you never know what happens once you get into the league. Maybe it's too much for him. Maybe he's just not that good. I have no idea. But this is it's a sad decline for Chase Claypool, one that I hope he pulls himself out of, but doesn't look very likely. The good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's no conditions. Like, right. They already took the draft pick. This is not an Aaron Rodgers situation. Like, this is it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that. Like, when, not to change the subject, but like when Aaron Rodgers went down, like where'd he come from? Packers.
Packers.
They won't even get a pick because he won't play. Like, that was
dropped to a second, which, I mean, and that's in the Chase Claypool situation, would drop to a third. But luckily, Mark Khan's like, nah, we're gonna do this right now. This is gonna be the easiest road in the book, easiest rule in the book, easiest trade in the book, whatever you want to say. And Chase Claypool might be getting benched again. Wish him all the best. Hope he turns things around. Right now, not looking very good.